You know, the sign of a good leader is when they've got good people underneath them, and it is evident that Scott Colomb, who is the district attorney for this area, has got a really, really good team in his office. We visited with Colin Hudson and Trina Davidson-Brooks earlier. Scott Colomb joins us now, district attorney, and Ben Lange, assistant district attorney, with us as well. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Richard. Thanks for having us.
We are at Sally Kate Winters Family Services in West Point, and this is a place that deals with abuse and neglect with children of young ages, with children who are in middle school, junior high, high school, all the way through, and is trying to protect them and make sure that justice is served for those who are abusive to children. The scum of the earth, I might say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Scott, good to be with you again. Several years that we've had a chance to visit. Remind people the counties that you serve.
Yes, sir. I represent Lowndes, Ottawa, Knoxville, and Clay.
That's pretty good sized chunk there, and probably more work than you would care to think about some days.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've got close to 200,000 people in the district, and I'm blessed to have a staff that works really hard and are very passionate about the community and passionate about safety. And when it comes to kids, there's no bigger priority than keeping our kids safe.
In terms of, percentage of the cases that you're dealing with, how many that come through your office are abuse cases that are involving children where you're really having to dig in and coordinate with Sally Kate Winters?
I'd say probably 10 to 15% is what I would guess. I haven't pulled the numbers recently, but, it's two phases to it, because you have the investigation phase, and a lot of times we try to be a partner in that, because when you have forensic interviews, those are so key to have experts who know how to ask questions to children, know how to get the information you need, and then we need to partner with the investigators to make sure they follow up with that information to corroborate it for prosecution.
Ben, Scott talks about the cooperation and the collaboration. Talk me through what, and I know there's no such thing as a standard abuse case that you're dealing with, but talk me through the process from when the district attorney's office first becomes involved through a court case, through a trial, what that looks like.
So the cooperation is critical. I think from the very beginning, a lot of times we'll get a call and we'll be told initially that they're going to have a forensic interview here at Sally Kate. And that interview, so often, it gives us building blocks to go forward with the investigation. And so we'll be working, there's almost a triangle trio there between Sally Kate, the investigator, and then our office, where we're talking with the investigator. Okay, let's look back at this interview, see who this child talked about in their interview, that we can go and interview then further to get more facts about the context of what might have happened, where it might have happened. Then once we figure that out, a lot of times from the interview, we can go back to that location, get pictures, establish where that child was when it may have been in a house. There may have been other people there, and it may be important later on for the jury to see, well, this bedroom's down at the very end of this house, so it is possible that somebody could have hurt this child while the mother was asleep in the house. And the worst thing that can happen is that we just take that interview and then we run to a trial. Because what you've got then is you've got this child who's got to testify probably at court, which can be a horrible thing, and there's nothing else there to help them. And so what we're trying to do is take that interview and then build an investigation with evidence that we can then support that child's testimony at trial and give them something to fight back with.
Now, Scott, I've got to assume that, and maybe I'm making a false assumption here, but one of the things, you come into a situation like this where you have a child that is telling a story of abuse.
Right.
But you have to make sure that it's a real story.
Right.
Because the allegations of child abuse, an indictment, a grand jury that says this has got to go to trial, those are really, really serious things. And it not only are you dealing with the life of a child, but you're also dealing with the potential of completely changing the life of an adult going forward. How do you go into this with kind of a clear mind and no preconceived notions of, we got to put this person in jail as soon as we're able to, and really listen and understand all the dynamics of a case?
Well, that's a great question because it is very important that during the investigation, you don't make any assumptions. When you interview that child, that's why Sally Kate Winters, you could tell from their training, they're not assuming anything. They're just trying to get information. And when Ben talks about not putting too much pressure on the child's testimony through other investigative tools, that also protects the suspect, because what you can do is interview the mom, interview the girlfriend, interview the boyfriend, interview the family members that are identified as part of the investigation to make sure there aren't any improper motives or improper conversations happening. Because for a child, particularly a young child, I don't think, in my experience, 10 years doing this, they're going to lie unless somebody else is improperly influencing them and giving them some motivation outside of what's right and wrong. And so it's very important that, again, you go back to the investigation and make sure you cover all your bases. And then the next thing is the grand jury process. You have 20 to 25 citizens who are told that they are to be the vetters of evidence and that they have an obligation to protect the accused as much as indict the accused. And so through that process and the questions they ask, I've learned that they'll be quick to make sure that they are trying their best to get it right. And that's a big protection from an indictment. And that's one of the things that Ben in my office that we do really well is we try to let the grand jury take charge, listen to their questions, let them be sort of an investigative body, because those are the people that are ultimately going to make a decision as to whether somebody's guilty or not. And if you follow their lead, usually they're going to make the right decision.
Yeah. You know, Ben, there are people listening that have served on a grand jury, but there are a lot of people that have never done that. And if you haven't been part of a grand jury, I think it's kind of hard to know what that process is like and what goes on behind closed doors, because there is a high level of importance that's placed on that being a confidential deal. Take us behind the scenes. What does it look like to be on a grand jury? What is that process like for the citizens, private citizens that Scott referenced a second ago, who are called to serve in that role?
Well, first of all, if you get called to serve on a grand jury, I highly encourage it. It's my favorite part of my job, quite frankly. It is rather than going to trial and you may just hear one case and there's tons of breaks, the judge is calling the lawyers in and out, you come in and you hear about everything that's going on in your community for the last 3-6 months, whatever the term structure may be in that county. And so you're hearing, it's rapid fire. You may hear a case every 15 minutes.
Wow.
That the investigators are coming in. The investigators, there's no rules of evidence at the grand jury. So the investigator comes in, they testify what the evidence would be at trial, and then we'll have specific exhibits for each case that we think are important that the grand jury sees. But at the same time, we want to treat it, it's a double-edged sword in a way. We want them to be critical to the evidence and go through it. And so the best grand juries that we have are people that are there to ask questions, to go meticulously through the facts of the case, and some of them are very obvious on its face. These types of cases that Sally Kate deals with can be, a lot of it can depend on what the child says and what the context of what they say. And so grand juries will have the opportunity then, if they want to get more evidence, they can send the investigator out and say, listen, we appreciate the hard work you've done so far, but for us to make this decision, we really need X, Y, and Z. And they can go get it. And so it's a very interactive process. And it's a very democratic process. There's the people are voting. We've got to have a certain threshold. It's not like a regular jury where all 12 have to agree. But it's still a super majority within that room have to say, I believe that there's probable cause that a felony's been committed and this person committed it.
Scott, when a grand jury makes a decision, is that binding?
Yeah, it's binding.
So does a case come to an end or come to a close if a grand jury does not bring an indictment?
The only way a prosecutor could present it to a new grand jury, because you want to avoid grand jury shopping, is if there's some new evidence, right? If you had a case where a child was accused a father of sexual assault or something, and then later on there was a witness that came forward or there was some DNA that came forward, that new evidence could allow you to present it to a new grand jury. But outside of new evidence, no. Here's one thing I want to add to Ben's point, because I think it's important. If you think about when you register to vote, right, you have a right to vote in each election. The only obligation you have in response to that is you have to serve on juries. That's the only responsibility you have. And we've had, the thing about people, they're usually nervous about doing it, but once they get on the grand jury, they love it. You learn a lot about the law, and it's a real important community service.
Yeah, it certainly is. Almost sometimes people play games with how can I get out of jury duty, and there's a difference between jury duty and serving on a grand jury, obviously, but certainly is an important part of the process. Thanks to both of you. Good visiting with you. Always a pleasure, Scott, to catch up. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Ben, thanks for coming by this morning as well. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. Got about half an hour left with you as we broadcast from Sally Kate Winters Family Services in West Point. Clearly, if you're listening, you understand how important the work is that's going on here. We appreciate you being with us on this Thursday morning. More coming up right after this.